Hello everyone, we are not present. We're preparing to react. We live in a culture of immediacy. Quick replies, fast judgments, snap emotions. But here's the thing, reacting is not the same as responding. Reacting is often just our nervous system yelling, "Protect me." And I want to invite us all today, not to silence our emotions but to hold space for them. Because if we truly want to grow, connect, and lead with courage, we have to stop reacting. Let me be clear, reaction is natural. It's part of our wiring, a survival mechanism. But when we constantly lead with reaction, we stop leading with intention. Reactions are often fueled by shame, fear, or the stories we are telling ourselves in the moment. They don't respect me. I'm not good enough. This always happens to me. We react to protect ourselves, but in doing so, we often shut down the very conversations and relationships that need openness and trust. Reacting might feel like power, but it's often just. To respond instead of react, we have to be willing to be uncomfortable. That means getting curious instead of defensive. It means saying, "Wow, that triggered something in me. Let me sit with that before I speak." This takes courage. It takes emotional literacy. And most of all, it takes vulnerability, the willingness to feel seen, even when it's messy or uncertain. When we respond, we lead with values. When we react, we often lead with wounds. We ground ourselves before we speak. The pause is where we reclaim our power, not the power to control others, but the power to choose ourselves, our response, our truth. Pausing gives us space to ask, is what I'm about to say or do in alignment with who I want to be? That question has saved relationships. That pause has started. I want to leave you with a powerful tool I use every day. When you feel triggered, ask yourself, what is the story I'm telling myself? This story might be old. It might be loud. But it's often not true. When we challenge the story, when we get curious, when we check our facts, we create space to respond with empathy instead of ego. We stop reacting to ghosts of our past, and start responding to the reality in front of us. We all know the feeling, that surge in the chest, the tightening in the throat, the sudden flush of heat behind the eyes. It can come from a cutting comment, a surprising email, a partner's silence, or even a single look. Before we even understand what's happening, we've already slammed the metaphorical door, raised our voice, fired back a text, or shut down entirely. That's a reaction. And for many of us, it's become our first language. But here's what we often don't realize: in the moment, when we react instantly and emotionally, we're not really speaking from our values. We're speaking from our wounds. We're not addressing the real issue, we're protecting ourselves from it. That's why I say, reaction is a shield, not a solution. See, reaction serves a purpose. It's not inherently bad or wrong. In fact, it's a natural and deeply human response rooted in our nervous system. Our brains are wired to detect threat and respond quickly. This was useful when danger looked like a saber-toothed tiger. But today, danger looks like criticism, disappointment, rejection, judgment. And even though the circumstances have changed, our internal wiring hasn't. So when someone interrupts us in a meeting or doesn't return our call, when we're challenged in public or confronted at home, our brain doesn't pause to evaluate context. It interprets that moment as a threat. And without awareness, we react. Fast, loud, defensive, sharp. We react because we want to feel safe. But let's be honest, most of our reactions don't make us feel safe. They make us feel ashamed, or disconnected, or misunderstood. In reality, reacting quickly often distances us from the very connection and resolution we're craving. We react to shield ourselves from pain, but that shield also blocks growth, empathy, and understanding. It's like trying to fix a broken bridge by throwing up walls. The intention might be protection, but the outcome is isolation. One of the most revealing truths I've learned, and it was not an easy one, is that when I'm reacting, I'm usually not listening. I'm preparing. Preparing my defense. Preparing my escape. Preparing my justification. And what I'm not doing is staying open. I'm not curious. I'm not grounded in my values. I'm not asking, what's really going on here? I'm asking, how do I protect myself as quickly as possible? This is where shame and fear love to step in and drive the car. They feed us all kinds of stories: "You're not respected. You always mess up. They're against you." These stories are powerful because they feel familiar. And we've often rehearsed them for years without even knowing it. But they're rarely true. And they're almost never complete. When we react based on those stories, we are not solving problems, we are reinforcing narratives that keep us stuck. Let me give you a small but very human example. Someone sends you a short, blunt text. You immediately feel dismissed or criticized. Your fingers move before your brain can even catch up. You type something passive-aggressive or overly assertive. You send it. You feel the rush of having defended yourself, but it quickly gives way to regret. And now, instead of clarifying what was really meant, you've created a new layer of tension. That's reaction as a shield. Now imagine a different path. You feel the sting of that message, but instead of reacting, you pause. You take a deep breath. You notice the story you're telling yourself. Maybe it's "they're mad at me," or "I've done something wrong." And then you ask, "Do I know that for sure?" Probably not. You might respond later, asking for clarity or context. Or maybe you say nothing until you feel calm. That moment of space changes everything. It doesn't remove the pain, but it creates the possibility of understanding. And that is a solution. Stopping ourselves from reacting isn't about being passive or silencing our feelings. It's about creating enough space between stimulus and response to allow our values to enter the conversation. When we do that, when we lead with curiosity instead of control, we can start to see people not as threats, but as humans with their own pain, their own stories, and their own blind spots. I won't pretend this is easy. It takes practice, and it takes courage. It means being willing to feel uncomfortable. To not always win the moment. To allow other people to misunderstand you sometimes without needing to defend yourself. That's hard. But it's also how we build trust. Because people don't trust perfection or control. They trust presence. They trust people who can stay grounded in hard conversations, not just explode and retreat. So the next time you feel that hot wave of reaction rising in you, try asking, "What am I protecting right now? And is there something more valuable I want to honor instead?" Maybe what you want to honor is connection. Or clarity. Or respect. Or truth. And that deeper desire can only be accessed when we move beyond our initial reaction. Because the truth is, reaction might keep us safe, but it won't make us whole. Solutions come from staying, listening, learning, and leading, not with shields, but with open hearts. One of the most powerful shifts we can make in our lives, both personally and professionally, is learning how to move from reacting to responding. But that shift doesn't just require discipline or control. It requires something that, for many of us, feels far riskier than either: vulnerability. And not just vulnerability with others, but with ourselves. The truth is, responding with intention takes awareness. Deep, sometimes uncomfortable self-awareness. It asks us to know what's really happening inside us, even when we'd rather not face it. And it asks us to stay open in moments when every part of us wants to shut down, armor up, and strike back. When something stings or surprises us, when someone says something that feels unfair, when we're challenged or triggered, our first instinct is often self-protection. And for many of us, that self-protection looks like reacting quickly and forcefully. We fire off a defensive reply. We retreat. We deflect with sarcasm. We try to re-establish control. And on the surface, that reaction might look strong. But inside? It's often fear in motion. Responding is different. Responding is intentional. It's slow. It's thoughtful. And it's brave because it means we're not running from the emotion. We're staying with it long enough to understand it. We're not just reacting to what was said, we're responding from what we believe. But here's the hard part: in order to respond instead of react, we have to first feel what's happening. That means noticing when we're hurt, embarrassed, scared, or insecure. And instead of numbing or lashing out, we sit with it. That pause, that moment where we resist the urge to strike, that's where vulnerability begins. Because it means we're allowing ourselves to feel before we act. Most of us have been taught that vulnerability is weakness. That if we show our emotions, if we hesitate, if we don't come across as completely in control, we're somehow failing. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Vulnerability is not about being exposed for the sake of it. It's about being honest. It's about showing up without knowing how things will go. It's about responding to a hard moment with your whole self, not just your defenses. Awareness plays a massive role here. You can't respond to something with clarity and care if you're not even aware of what you're feeling. That's why emotional literacy is essential. It's the ability to recognize your emotions and name them, not just mad, sad, or fine, but disappointed, ashamed, overwhelmed, afraid of being left out. That kind of emotional vocabulary gives us power. Because when we know what we're actually feeling, we're more equipped to choose what to do with it. If I'm aware that what I'm actually feeling is shame, not anger, then I can pause and ask myself, what part of this made me feel not enough? That's a radically different question than how do I make the other person pay? That shift in awareness changes not just the moment, but the relationship. And this isn't just about conflict. It's about communication in general. Even in leadership, maybe especially in leadership, responding with vulnerability and awareness builds trust. It tells people, I see what's happening. I care enough to stay in this conversation. I don't have to dominate it to feel safe. Now, let's be honest, there's risk in responding this way. When we choose to pause, feel, and respond from a place of integrity, we might be misunderstood. We might be seen as passive, or soft. But we're not. We're practicing strength without armor. And there's nothing weak about that. In fact, there's a quiet power in being able to stay centered when things get tense, to respond without weaponizing our emotions. I want to be clear that this doesn't mean we suppress what we feel. Responding is not about being overly polite or emotionally neutral. It's not about hiding anger or grief. It's about honoring the emotion in a way that serves the moment, not hijacks it. You can be angry and still respond thoughtfully. You can be heartbroken and still speak with grace. You can feel insecure and still choose to stay open instead of shutting down. And that takes practice. It takes failing and trying again. It takes catching ourselves mid-reaction and saying, wait, that wasn't what I really meant. It takes learning to pause, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. Because that pause? That's where the shift happens. That's where we move from reaction to response. From fear to intention. From habit to healing. Over time, this kind of responding becomes a reflection of who we are, not just how we feel in the moment. It's a commitment to showing up fully, even when it's hard. It's about asking, again and again, what does this moment need from me, not just what do I want to unload. When we make that shift, when we respond instead of react, we create a ripple effect. Our relationships get healthier. Our communication becomes more real. We begin to feel more grounded and less exhausted by conflict. We stop spending our energy cleaning up messes we made in a rush, and start investing it in connection, growth, and understanding. That's what responding with vulnerability and awareness makes possible. And it's one of the most human and most courageous things we can ever choose to do. If you'd like, I can build out the next section too, the power of the pause. Just let me know. Absolutely. Here is an expanded, 900-word version of The Power of the Pause, written in a thoughtful, educational, and vulnerable style. We all know what it feels like to be in a rush, to be caught up in the whirlwind of thoughts, feelings, and reactions. It's as if everything is moving so fast that if we don't act immediately, we might lose control. But here's the truth that's easy to forget in those moments: when we rush, we lose the opportunity to truly respond. And when we lose the opportunity to respond, we miss the chance to engage with our values, our truth, and our potential for real connection. In a world that celebrates speed of communication, speed of decision-making, speed of action, there is a quiet power in slowing down. And that power? It lies in the pause. The pause is where everything shifts. It's where we get to reclaim our agency and bring our full selves to the moment. You see, in most situations, the impulse is to react immediately. Someone says something hurtful, and our first instinct is to snap back. We're cut off in traffic, and we want to honk or speed up to show our displeasure. We feel disappointed, and we rush to explain ourselves, to justify our feelings, to make the other person understand. It feels natural. It feels almost right. After all, we've been trained for years to respond quickly, to defend ourselves instantly, to protect our turf without hesitation. But in those split-second reactions, we are not responding at all, we are simply reacting from a place of fear, shame, or ego. The body is wired for this. Our nervous system kicks in to protect us from perceived harm. But here's the catch, those reactions often make things worse, not better. The quicker we react, the less space we give ourselves to think, to feel, and to choose a response that aligns with who we truly want to be. The pause, that brief moment between stimulus and reaction, is where we find our power. It's where we create space for awareness, where we decide what we are going to do with our emotions instead of letting them control us. It's where we get to step out of autopilot and into choice. And the beauty of that moment is that it doesn't require us to be perfect. It simply requires us to be present. When we pause, we allow ourselves to take a breath. We give our minds the time it needs to catch up with our bodies, to examine the situation instead of reacting automatically. This pause is like a reset button. It's an opportunity to check in with ourselves before we respond to the external world. In those precious seconds, we can ask ourselves, what do I need right now? What's really going on inside me? What is this moment asking of me? We can also ask, how do I want to show up in this situation? Do I want to show up as someone who reacts with anger or defensiveness? Or do I want to show up as someone who leads with calm, compassion, and clarity? The pause allows us to tap into the values we want to embody, instead of simply acting from the emotional impulses we are feeling in the moment. This is where emotional intelligence comes into play. The pause gives us the space to process what we're feeling and to make a more informed choice about how we want to act. Instead of letting shame or frustration dictate our response, we get to decide. We get to choose how to communicate, how to express ourselves, and how to move forward in a way that aligns with our deeper truths. But here's the thing, pausing isn't always easy. In fact, it can feel downright uncomfortable. It's hard to sit with those intense emotions, the heat of anger, the sting of rejection, the fear of being misunderstood, and not immediately act on them. But the more we practice, the more we realize that those emotions, as powerful as they are, don't define us. They're just visitors. They come and go, but we have the power to decide what to do with them. What's beautiful about the pause is that it doesn't require us to control our emotions. It doesn't mean we are pushing them down or pretending they don't exist. It means we are allowing ourselves to feel those emotions fully, but we are not allowing them to control us. We are giving ourselves the gift of time to reflect before we act. In the pause, we can also choose empathy. When we pause, we have the opportunity to consider the other person's perspective. We can step out of our own narrative and ask, what might they be feeling right now? What do they need from me in this moment? The pause doesn't just help us slow down our reactions, it also helps us expand our understanding of the situation. It gives us the chance to see things through a lens of compassion, to respond in a way that deepens connection instead of escalating conflict. I've found that some of the most difficult moments in life have been the ones where I chose to pause instead of react. Those pauses have saved relationships, preserved my peace of mind, and allowed me to make decisions I'm proud of. And while the impulse to react is still there, it's a deeply ingrained part of being human. The more we practice the pause, the easier it becomes to stay grounded in it. In the pause, we are reminded that we don't have to have all the answers immediately. We don't have to fix everything or respond perfectly. We can give ourselves the grace to not know exactly what to say, and still move forward with integrity. We can respond with a sense of clarity, not confusion, because we've given ourselves permission to think, to feel, and to choose how we want to show up. The pause is an act of self-care, but it's also an act of love for ourselves, love for others, and love for the process of growth. It's a reminder that we don't have to rush through life. We don't have to move at the pace of everyone around us. We can honor our own rhythm, and trust that by pausing, we are making room for something deeper, something more meaningful to emerge. Ultimately, the pause is where we reclaim our power. It's where we get to decide who we want to be in the world, not just who we are in a moment of reaction. And that, my friends, is the kind of power that changes lives, builds trust, and transforms relationships. I hope this version resonates with you. If you'd like any adjustments or further expansions, just let me. Certainly. Here is an expanded, 900-word version of Rewriting Our Internal Stories in an educational, thoughtful, and emotionally insightful style. Every day, we tell ourselves stories. Some of these stories are deeply empowering, filled with hope, courage, and possibility. But many of the stories we tell ourselves, especially when we're in challenging situations, are rooted in fear, shame, and self-doubt. These stories often aren't true, but they are so familiar to us that we begin to believe them. Over time, these stories can shape how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we move through the world. The thing about these internal stories is that we often don't even realize we are telling them. They become so ingrained, so automatic, that we accept them as reality. If someone criticizes us, we might immediately think, "I'm not good enough." If someone withdraws, we might tell ourselves, "They don't care about me." If we face failure, we might think, "I always mess up. This is just who I am." These stories play out in our minds in split seconds, but their impact can last much longer, influencing our choices, our actions, and our relationships. But what if we could rewrite these stories? What if we could challenge the narratives we've created about ourselves and about the world, and begin to tell a new, more empowering story? This is the power we have when we become aware of our internal stories and learn to reshape them. Rewriting our internal stories doesn't mean pretending that things are perfect or pretending that we don't feel pain, disappointment, or fear. It doesn't mean brushing aside our real feelings or experiences. What it means is learning to question the stories we tell ourselves about those feelings and experiences. It means stepping back from the narrative and asking, is this story serving me? Is this story based on facts, or is it based on assumptions, fears, and past hurts? It means acknowledging that we have the power to interpret our lives in new ways, and that we are not bound to the old scripts we've been carrying around for so long. One of the first steps in rewriting our internal stories is becoming aware of the stories we are already telling. This requires slowing down and paying attention to our thoughts, especially in moments of stress, conflict, or vulnerability. How do we respond when we are challenged or criticized? What are the first thoughts that come to mind when things don't go the way we want them to? What do we believe about ourselves when we face setbacks or when others don't meet our expectations? These stories often come from the past. Maybe they were formed during childhood, or they were shaped by significant life events that left us feeling small, unworthy, or misunderstood. Perhaps they were handed down to us by our families, cultures, or society's messages that told us we weren't enough, that we didn't belong, or that we had to earn love or approval. These stories are often shaped by external voices, but they are internalized in such a way that we begin to believe them as our truth. But the truth is that our past doesn't have to define us. The stories we were told, or the stories we told ourselves about our experiences, don't have to dictate the way we see ourselves today. We can choose to challenge those narratives and create new ones that are rooted in compassion, acceptance, and growth. The key is to recognize that we are not our stories. We are the authors of them. Once we become aware of the stories we are telling, the next step is to question them. Are they based on facts, or are they based on assumptions or judgments? Are they helping us grow, or are they holding us back? Often, the stories we tell ourselves are incomplete. They may be based on a single moment in time, or a fleeting interaction that we've blown out of proportion. For example, if someone doesn't respond to our text, we might immediately think, they're mad at me, or they don't like me anymore. But that's just one possible interpretation. The truth might be that they're busy, or they've forgotten, or they're dealing with their own personal challenges. By assuming the worst, we create a story that only adds to our anxiety and fear, when in reality, the story we've told ourselves may have nothing to do with the actual situation. This is where emotional awareness comes in. When we begin to recognize that our internal stories are often shaped by fear, insecurities, and past wounds, we can choose to rewrite them. We can remind ourselves that we are not defined by the mistakes we've made, the things we didn't accomplish, or the relationships that didn't work out. We can choose to see ourselves as resilient, worthy of love, and capable of growth, rather than as failures or people who are unworthy of success and connection. Rewriting our internal stories also means giving ourselves permission to embrace vulnerability. When we tell ourselves a story of inadequacy, we are often trying to protect ourselves from vulnerability. We might think, if I'm not perfect, if I'm not good enough, then I won't be hurt. If I don't get too close to others, I won't risk being rejected. But that's not the way to live fully. Vulnerability is where courage and growth happen. By rewriting our stories, we can begin to see vulnerability not as a weakness, but as a source of strength. We can learn to embrace our imperfections and use them as fuel for transformation. One powerful tool for rewriting our internal stories is to challenge the negative narratives with more balanced, compassionate perspectives. Instead of thinking, "I always mess up," we can ask ourselves, "What did I learn from this experience? How can I grow from this?" Instead of telling ourselves, "I'm not enough," we can remind ourselves, "I am enough as I am, and I am constantly evolving." Instead of thinking, "This will never work out," we can challenge that thought with, "I don't know the outcome yet, but I have the resilience to navigate whatever comes my way." As we begin to rewrite our internal stories, we create space for more self-compassion, more growth, and more connection. We begin to see ourselves not as victims of our past or our circumstances, but as empowered individuals who have the ability to choose how we want to move forward. And when we do this, we can start to rewrite not only our own stories but also the stories we share with others. We stop projecting our fears and insecurities onto the people around us, and we begin to connect from a place of authenticity and understanding. Rewriting our internal stories is a continuous process. It's not something that happens overnight, but with practice, it becomes easier. The more we challenge the old narratives, the more we create space for new ones to emerge. And with each story we rewrite, we take one more step toward becoming the person we were always meant to be. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or expansions on any other section. It sounds like you're wrapping up a message or a video for your channel. Here's a cleaner version of your sentence that you might want to use. Thanks for watching. I'm glad all my friends like this channel. Feel free to adjust it if you're aiming for a more casual or specific tone. Let me know if you'd like help refining it further.